They are among the most bitter of enemies in the Star Wars universe. While both species would be introduced in the original trilogy, their civilizations and rivalry would come to light in works that would follow, both in Legends and in more recent canon. Today on The Nerds Strike Back, we cover the Trandoshan-Wookiee conflict. Let's first begin with the species that we've seen less of, the Trandoshans. We first saw a Trandoshan in The Empire Strikes Back, as a part of a lineup of bounty hunters hired to track down the Millennium Falcon. This would of course be Bosk, who is probably the most well-known member of his species, but we'll get to him specifically in a later video. Taking a step back, let's look at a quick overview of the Trandoshan species as a whole, where they come from, their culture, and their personality traits. Trandoshans originate from the planet of Trandosha, or shortened, just Dosh, a mid-rim planet which is within the same star system as Kashyyyk. It's orbited by the moon Waska, which was used for private hunting as we saw in the Clone Wars. Now the planet itself is covered in various jungles and forests, making it ideal for Trandoshan hunting grounds. Trandoshans themselves are well built for these environments. They're scaly and tall, and often possess great strength, especially the more experienced of their species. They bear sharp claws and sharper teeth, ideal for their diets and hunting. They also hatch from eggs, and shed as one may expect from those of reptilian nature. Their most interesting trait, and another trait of lizards, is the ability to regrow their limbs. As you can imagine, this is a wonderful foil to Wookiees, who commonly dismember their foes. However, Wookiees are not the only ones to take things to the extreme. In the majority of appearances we've seen, Trandoshans exhibit aggressive behavior, often sadistic and cruel in nature. In Legends, we know that Trandoshans also honor life debts, called a Grakhausk. This is in a very similar fashion as the practice by the Wookiees. Trandoshan hunters worship a goddess called the Scorekeeper. They would accumulate scores by collecting Jagannath points, which they use to tally their favor with the Scorekeeper. Now, not much is known about this deity besides that it appears to be female. Other than that, we've only seen mentions of her across comics, games, and books. It could be interesting to see non-Force entities like the Scorekeeper materialize within the Star Wars universe at some point. Let's shift our focus now to the much more familiar neighbors of the Trandoshans, the Wookiees. Wookiees originate from Kashyyyk, another temperate planet filled with oceans, Roshar tree forests, mountains, and jungles, home to a plethora of wildlife besides the Wookiees. The planet has seen much exploitation at the hands of various corporations, as well as mercenaries and even the Galactic Empire. The Wookiees are tall, furry, and rather hungry humanoid aliens. They're familial people and fiercely loyal to their kind, or to those which hold their life debts. They are clan-based, much like the Trandoshans. They also rally under a chieftain, likely the most popular example being Tarful, who most recently appeared in Jedi Fallen Order. Wookiees, similar to Trandoshans, are avid hunters. However, where the Trandoshans hunt for sport, the Wookiees hunt out of necessity, and with great reverence to wildlife and nature as a whole. As we've seen in The Bad Batch, Wookiees ride Mylea into battle. They're also able to signal Kinrath by knocking on Roshar trees at specific intervals. A fun fact about Kinrath, we first saw these Acklay-like creatures in the now Legends Knights of the Old Republic, which also presented the player with a fascinating look into Wookiee Society as they struggled with Zerka's exploitation of the planet. However, the Kinrath in that game is actually seen in Anchorhead on Tatooine. Although the design differs ever so slightly, it seems to be the same creature. Shifting back to the Wookiees themselves, they are not often shown the same dignity that they show their prey. They are coveted for their strength in forced labor, as well as their pelts. The Wookiees have been exploited throughout their existence as a species. They share a strong mutual distaste of the Trandoshans, who have benefited greatly from stronger powers wishing to turn Kashyyyk toward the fires of industry. While there isn't a singular event that incited the bitter hate between Trandoshans and Wookiees, we can deduce that by the Trandoshan culture as we know it, along with their neighboring planets, that these issues could very well have surfaced naturally. It is believed by Trandoshans that Wookiee pelts conveniently earned one more of the coveted Jagannath points. Despite the questionable validity of that claim, it no doubt encouraged the Trandoshans to hunt the Wookiees. Given that the Trandoshans were not solely bound to hunt on Trandosha, it's likely they considered finding another hunter's paradise within their own star system a gift from the scorekeeper herself. The Confederacy of Independent Systems employed Trandoshans throughout the Clone Wars against the Wookiees on Kashyyyk, weakening their forces in the now Legends Republic Commando video game. As we mentioned, the Empire also recognized such a conflict, and employed Trandoshans, as we recently saw on the Bad Batch, to terrorize and destroy Wookiees that were holding out. Indeed, it gives even more purpose to Bossk's involvement in the hunt for the Millennium Falcon, as he would have no doubt liked to claim Chewbacca's pelt for his own. However, despite who the Trandoshans received support from, they only ever had one goal in mind: dominate the Wookiee species and make the Kashyyyk system their own hunting ground. Now, we all know and love the Wookiees, and while clearly there are some grumpy ones like Chrysanthemum, we do have an entire holiday special based on Life Day, 2 if you include the Lego version. But we are left with the question, are Trandoshans naturally the way they are? Are they a product of their culture and beliefs? Are they just naturally antagonistic to anything that could be considered prey and/or a trophy? Well, thanks to recent Star Wars literature, we have a bit more insight into this question. The High Republic, Issue 12, provides an explanation through the Trandoshan Jedi Master, Skier. He explains that the natural urges of the Trandoshan brain are the cause for this rageful fury that we often see Trandoshans exercising. These natural tendencies can be overcome, but the Magrak syndrome, a disease exclusive to the Trandoshans, gradually brings these traits back over time. Skier himself suffered from this disease, and it initiated a loss of his connection to the Force. We even see Feresk Sat in Star Wars Squadrons exhibit loyalty and other positive traits to his New Republic squadmates. It is unknown yet if he will eventually contract the syndrome as well. It's interesting that the disease is exclusive to Trandoshans, and naturally begs several questions. Where did it come from? Trandosha? Perhaps so, which of course would give way to the Trandoshans turning the entire planet into a hunting ground. Perhaps it's the disease itself that gives the species the illusion of this deity, urging them to become the greatest hunter. Or could it be more sinister? Does the scorekeeper herself implement this disease into the Trandoshans for some greater purpose? It almost seems all too convenient, especially with the proximity of the Wookiees. But perhaps that's a theory for another time. The Trandoshans and Wookiees don't have a great war. There's no inciting incident or sinister plot like we find in big stories in the Skywalker saga. It seems to be entirely rooted in proximity, as well as the Trandoshans' insatiable desire to hunt. This conflict is one that continues to be explored over time, and one we can be sure to see more of, given its role in the Book of Boba Fett and the Bad Batch. It's exciting to explore a new rivalry beyond the Jedi and Sith, and we'll continue to wait for the next chapter of this bitter conflict between the Trandoshans and the Wookiees. If you want to support the channel, visit our Patreon page, where you can also unlock exclusive perks. And let us know in the comments what characters and topics you'd like to see us cover on The Nerd Strike Back.